Coming up next, this legendary band created one of the greatest records of one of music's greatest years. I'm talking about 1987. And what they named their record was a big joke. A big joke that the band laughed about until it actually came true. This shy and introverted foursome went from playing in front of 3 people to selling out stadiums, but they never compromised their art to do it. The story of this song and the record that took them to the masses is coming up next on Professor of Rock. Hey music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. If you remember that excitement and really euphoria of your very first concert, you're going to enjoy this channel. Make sure that you subscribe below right now. Check the notifications so that you can get our latest videos and interviews. Now, we also have a Patreon and new merch, and you're going to definitely want to get some tickets to our live series below Professor Rock Live. So if you asked Depeche Mode if they had gone mainstream with their 6th studio album, the answer would be an obvious and resounding no. So one has to be curious why they chose Music for the Masses as the name of the album. According to keyboardist Andy Fletcher, the name of the record was tongue-in-cheek. In the songwriter Martin Gore's words, "I think our music never crosses over to the general public, hence the album title. It's only the fans who buy our stuff." The title, Music for the Masses, was basically a sarcastic response to that prospect that Depeche Mode might be getting too big for their britches or trousers. Quite simply, it was a joke. And as it turns out, one that a lot of people missed. DM was never interested in winning any popularity contests. They were proud outsiders and misfits, always living on the fringes of the vibrant 80s pop scene. However, in an iconic twist of fate, the facetious title actually proved to be an accurate prediction of things to come. By March 1988, just over 4 months after its release, Music for the Masses went gold. It was also certified platinum before any of its predecessors. Then 1 month after the release, Depeche Mode set out on their most ambitious tour to date with shows in Europe, Japan, and across North America. 101 shows to be precise. And that 101st performance was merely a 70,000-seat sellout at the Rose Bowl in Pasadena, California. Music for the Masses was where Depeche Mode broke up their long-standing production team in favor of the multifaceted David Bascombe. Though this was his first major production assignment, for the first time, Depeche Mode relaxed their synth-only approach. Gore was now playing guitar on more than just his demos. Though not surprisingly, the sounds were heavily distorted and processed, but it was technically a step in a new direction that only defined their signature sound even more. Singer Dave Gahan was thrilled about the feel of the record. He said, "We were more conscious of building up atmospheres, heightening the songs to an absolute massive feeling, and then bringing them down again. We had discovered dynamics. It was our first truly arranged album." So take a walk through the beautiful darkness of the monumental album. Let's start with track number 1, Never Let Me Down Again. The opening manifesto of Music for the Masses, to be exact. It's arguably their best-known cut from the album. It was the 2nd single. It was released on August 24th, 1987. For the members of Depeche Mode, Never Let Me Down Again, it grew into a standout track for their live set and became a permanent fixture in many of their performances. This is thanks to the introduction of some genuinely live parts, including a heavily processed and distinctive guitar riff from Martin Gore, certainly one of the most distinct riffs of the 80s. And other moments, real orchestral sounds with strings and horns, as well as some brawny percussion samples filled in the backing track for a rich anthemic groove. As for the lyrical content of the song, the meaning, that's something that's been debated forever. Actually, in a 1988 radio interview, Andy Fletcher gave us one word to go off for the song: innocence. And in a non-specific way, Gore affirmed this sentiment. He said, "There are a lot of recurring themes in my songs. One thing that always reappears is disillusionment and lack of contentment. A lot of the songs also deal with search for innocence. So take from these quotes what you will. Innocence seems like a good place to start, though, but maybe the song means something entirely different to all of you. Let me know in the comments. So Never Let Me Down Again, it only made it to number 63 on the US Billboard Hot 100. I don't think America was ready for it yet, though it did reach number 12 on the US Dance Club chart. Had a lot more success in Europe, went to number 7 in Switzerland, Sweden, number 5 in Spain, number 2 in West Germany, and number 1 in Denmark. He knows where he's taking. So from the end of Never Let Me Down Again, we flow into the second track, The Things You Said, where Martin Gore takes over the vocal duties. My friends, about the things you said. I tell you, this song has always cut me to the bone, especially the version from 101. Song about someone finding out that his or her significant other has told friends deep secrets about them, with the heartbreaking knowledge that the vulnerability shared is now known by many. I mean, we've all been through this situation where we've shared ourselves so intimately with another person who has defiled that trust and closeness by sharing it casually to our utter humiliation. Martin Gore's tender interpretation makes it one of DM's best album cuts, in my opinion. From there, we move into the sounds of track 3 that to my ears have always felt like the sounds of an eerie night before giving into that standard attention synth beat of Strangelove. This was the album's first single, but it was also a song that the Depeche Mode entourage just couldn't stop tinkering with even after its release. Apparently, it was one of the more difficult tracks to complete on the album. Made up of a lot of little parts, the members of Depeche Mode couldn't find a central sound to build the rest of the song off of. Keyboardist Alan Wilder actually lost count on how many times they had to redo it. In June 1987, while the band and Bascon were finalizing the mixing, they were joined by former DM producer, the great Daniel Miller. Miller had actually remixed his own version of the song and called it the Blind Mix. This extended cut was a slower variation of the song, and apparently much preferred over the single. So the consensus was that the original should be reworked with elements from the Blind Mix. The resulting synthesis made it onto the album. I'll say it again, pain. Almost a year after the album's release, Strangelove received another notable mix, this time a more danceable track that targeted American tastes. That was produced by Tim Simonon, otherwise known as Bomb the Bass. That was released on August 28, 1988 as a single for the second time in the US. Strangelove 88 climbed to number 50 on the Hot 100, beating the original iteration by about 26 chart positions. The song has so many classic Martin Gore one-liners, from I give in to sin because you have to make this life livable. Because you have to make this life livable. Give in to sin because I like to practice what I preach. Because I like to practice what I preach. It's a DM masterwork. I remember making mixtapes in high school and adding this song. I even named one of the tapes I'll Make Your Heart Smile after the song, the lyrics in the song. From Strangelove, we effortlessly flow into the beautiful David Gaughan and Martin Gore blend of Sacred. Track number 4, Sacred, has David Gaughan preaching the flawed words of a religious missionary. With its exotic Middle Eastern melody, harkens back to a bit of DM sound on the first couple of albums, in my opinion, trying to sell the story of love's eternal glory. Now, the end of side 1 is Little 15. The 5th track, Little 15, was released on May 18, 1988 as a limited 4th single from Music for the Masses. Little 15. Little 15 started out as quite a difficult track to complete, so the band left it for the end because they really didn't know how to go about it. Finally, Alan Wilder decided to take some inspiration from minimalist composer Michael Nyman. Just started with a funny little hypnotic sequence. But all the parts started coming together after that, and from there it just flowed. And in your smile. Originally planned for West Germany and France alone, it went on to be released throughout Europe, in part thanks to a UK fan base that turned the record into a popular import. Despite never officially being released in the band's home country, Little 15 managed to make its way up to the singles chart to number 60. It proved that DM's hardcore following was as desperately loyal as ever. Why take the smooth with the rough? The US market did not originally release the song as a single. However, when the black boxes were released in the early 90s, Little 15 was finally released in the US. She wants a nice surprise. Side 2 opens with the first Depeche Mode song that seduced me as a kid, Behind the Wheel. The first time I really heard Depeche Mode was when I was in 7th grade. I had an older sister who was a cheerleader, and a lot of upperclassmen had the hots for her. We had one of those basketball hoops that you could cinch down from about 10 feet to 8.5 feet. It seemed like every Sunday a bunch of kids would come over and play jam ball at my house because of the 8.5-foot hoop, also to impress my sister. Now, being a nerdy underclassman, I was the kid brother trying to hang out with the cool kids. One of these guys had a boombox, and he was playing a mixtape filled with new wave and punk songs. I happened to walk out of the house right when Behind the Wheel began playing. I felt like I got hit in the face with the basketball. It was unlike anything that I'd ever heard in my entire life. The sound of the tire rim falling to the ground, rattling, that distinct drum beat followed by that driving techno part. Followed by a simple keyboard pattern that led to the industrial rev of a guitar with another melodic synth layered on top of that. It hypnotized my soul, and it led into Dave Gaughan's noir-like vocal that harmonized perfectly with Martin Gore's pristine tenor. The words, "My little girl, drive anywhere," was poetry in motion. Drive anywhere. While 10 gladiators, 10 cool kids were playing jam ball barbarically, my entire existence was completely enlightened by this invisible force that would upgrade my appreciation of music. I mean, suddenly I didn't care about being cool and hanging out with them. I just wanted to know desperately who this was, this band coming out of the stereo. I wanted to enter into that wavelength and never come back. I remember I ran into the court yelling, "Hey, who's this band? What is this song?" Yeah, I didn't really know what was going on. I actually got knocked to the ground, and they all laughed at me. But this one kid held out his hand and he, helped me up, and he said, "Hey, it's Depeche Mode. They're really good, aren't they?" I remember thinking, better than that, they're just darkly fascinating. The kid that helped me up, he was one of the coolest kids in school. He was a jock. He was a senior. He was also kind of a waver, too. I wanted to know more about this music. He lent me this mixtape, and my conversion to new wave and alternative happened really overnight. It was one of the pinnacles of the first half of my life. I mean, that day, the gods were smiling on me because I listened to that tape every second I could for the next 7 days. I was baptized into the fire, Depeche Mode, The Cure, The Smiths, New Order, Joy Division. And friends, that was a glorious week of music discovery that I can never fully put into words. Behind the Wheel was released as Music for the Masses' third single on December 28, 1987, with a pulsing beat as steady as a metronome. I mean, Gore's alluring lyrics keep us fixated on reaching the song's conclusion while simultaneously heightening this already overbearing sense of urgency. Alan Wilder described the musicality as a sequence of 4 repeating chords, something like an M.C. Escher optical illusion. The ones where you walk up the stairway and never get to the top because somehow you're at the bottom again. This is kind of how the chord sequence works, and you just can't stop it. And That's the beauty of it, because it ties in so well to the driving analogy of this song. It's like you're going on and on deeper into the night, but never arriving at a destination. Also, according to Wilder, the oppressive techno-noir sound of this track was created from a combination of 3 different sounds. A guitar pluck sampled and then pitched down, hand striking the end of a Hoover tube, and a mini Moog for added bottom end. The single version was remixed by American producer and DJ Shep Pettibone, chosen for release because it was much more danceable than the album version. This was a tactic used more than once for the singles on this album. And of course, the version with Route 66, very, very cool as well. Behind the Wheel went to number 61 on the Billboard Hot 100, went to number 3 on the US Dance Club chart, reached number 21 in the UK and France, number 19 in Spain, 16 in Ireland, and number 6 in Switzerland and Germany. Now, as you hear that intense breathing going into track 7, a little scary, a little creepy. But you're calmed by Martin Gore's voice, and I Want You Now. I want you now. Actually, the heavy breathing sounds at the beginning and close of the song were sampled from an accordion, not a person. This intense breathing sound was created by inflating and deflating the instrument without playing a single note. Going into the 8th track, To Have and to Hold, we hear a sampled Russian speech, where the translation is actually, the evolution of nuclear arsenals and socially psychological aspects of the arms race was considered in these reports. It's an apt contemporary Cold War passage befitting the dark musical mood Wilder was aiming for with the rest of Music for the Masses. Now, an extra mix of To Have and to Hold ended up featuring on the CD version of Music for the Masses as To Have and to Hold Spanish Taster. So why 2 versions of the same song on the same CD? What Alan Wilder said, Martin submitted his demo in the usual way, and although I liked the song, his original idea was too lightweight for my taste, so I pushed it in a darker, more atmospheric direction. This was the primary version of the song that was always intended to be on the album. Martin Gore, however, was very attached to his more poppy demo and said that he wanted to record it too. For Wilder and Gore, the discrepancy wasn't a problem. Rather, each acknowledged that the other just had a different vision for the song. No big deal. And since Gore felt strongly about including his demo on the album, that's what they did. Track number 9 is the industrial sounding and darkly metallic synth rock song, Nothing. It's aptly supported by a deliberate David Gahan vocal and a Martin Gore background. It's very dark, very depressing take on life, even though the arrangement is delectable. Great version on the live album 101 as well. Now, the final track on the original iteration of Music for the Masses is the haunting instrumental Pimp. Escalating with an almost threatening intensity. The song uses classical instrumentation, including timps and bass drums. It is unlike any of DM's previous instrumental tracks, in my opinion. This is a song that definitely puts you on edge as you listen to it, as it just builds and builds and builds. Alan Wilder said, "You end up with the kitchen sink. It's not just one little riff that turns around on itself. I'd been listening to a lot of Philip Glass at the time, the Minimalists. So you got this one theme, and then we just kept adding and adding and adding to it. The term pimp fittingly blends with the song's chilling musicality." The uncredited instrumental track that follows Pimp is called Interlude Number 1, Mission Impossible. Now, future versions would include the bonus tracks Agent Orange, Never Let Me Down Again, the Agro Mix, to having to hold, like I said, Spanish Taster mix and Pleasure Little Treasure, the glitter mix. Music for the Masses was the perfect statement for Depeche Mode to make in 1987. It was kinged by their phenomenal live album 101, one of the best live albums ever. I mean, this was a band that gave hope to the Outcasts, of which I was a member. It was the precursor to world domination of Violator. They went from the underground to the forefront by challenging listeners to think and feel deeper. They mangled the mainstream. Music for the masses, indeed. Leave us a comment about Depeche Mode and Music for the Masses, this life-changing album. What are your favorite songs from the record? What are your memories of this landmark album? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this episode, guess what? We got album breakdowns for Black Celebration and Violator for you to check out as well. We'll link to that. And if you dig our content, we would love to have you subscribe. We'd love to have you as part of our community. Thanks again for all of your support. So long as you keep watching, keep the videos coming. Until next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends.